Hey everybody, did you notice I stopped waving now? Good. I don't know why I'm waving at you. Hello, hi. So today we're gonna have a little talk. Just a little talk. A little information gathering for you to help you in these times of possible desperation, possible need. Now, I am not the person to try to talk you into kind of stopping or slowing down in your book buying. I am not the person to do that. I wouldn't dare, because I myself am a book buyer. I myself am a book hoarder. I am a collector. Let's go with collector. It's nicer. So I would never try to tell you to slim down your collection. I'm not someone who would ever tell you to stop buying. I do think, though, that we should talk about maybe supplementing your book addiction, maybe finding different ways to get that hit so that it isn't costing you so much money. Now, previously I have done an episode, of secondhand bookstores, and I'll try to remember to link it below. I'll make a note about that. Secondhand bookstores, and they exist in kind of a gray area for some people. Some people are very much, no, they are bad because the author doesn't get paid. And that's true, the author doesn't get paid. But I don't know. I'm a fan. I know a lot of other authors who are fans as well. I don't think they're all too terribly bad, as long as that's not the only way that you're getting books. But also, I mean, if you get a secondhand book from like a smaller author, you read the book and you like it, and then you go online and talk about how much you liked it, I promise you the author's going to be thankful that you're bringing attention to their work. Now, there are other things to talk about. The thing that I want to start with is a years-long battle that I actually used to be on the other side of. So I understand where people are coming from. And that is the battle of the physical book versus the ebook. When ebooks first started becoming popular, I was very much in the how dare you category of this. I wanted nothing to do with an electronic book. There's something about the sensation of the physical book, of turning the pages, of having it with you, being able to put it on a shelf when you're done, that if you know it, you know it. You know what that means. However, over time, and as my own writing career has kind of been sputtering along, and more authors that I meet, my own book buying has shot through the damn roof, because I want to read from my friends. I want to read from these neat people that I keep meeting. So it can get a little costly. So what I do is, if I see something from, like, say, a new writer, someone that I want to take them out for a test drive, I will buy an ebook from them, because ebooks are generally cheaper. And if I like the book, hell yeah, I'm buying a physical copy. If I didn't like the book, no harm, no foul. It exists, in the Kindle. I have a Kindle Paperwhite, and it's got that's just what Amazon put up there, but it's got the really easy to read. You can read it outside, anywhere. And it's small, lightweight. You can also read ebooks on your phone. You can read ebooks on your computer. You don't have to necessarily get an e-reader. There are programs, apps that you can download that will give you the capabilities to read those files for free. So it doesn't have to be this big purchase. Now, again, on my desk back there with my, currently reading things, I have my Kindle, but I also have a physical book back there. I'm still reading both. I'm not giving it up, but it is a cost-effective way to really get a look at some things. And it is also space effective. Not that I care so much about that, because I'll find the space, don't you worry. But it is sort of annoying when you buy a book, you spend the money on it, and you turn out not to like it. It kind of gets on your nerves when you see it looking at you from the shelf, and it gets on your nerves that you paid all that money for it. So I think ebooks, they have their place. They will never live up to a physical book, but if you haven't tried it, really, really rethink that stance. Like, I'm not going to point my finger at you and scream at you, because if you're like me, someone doing that is going to cause you to take a position that is opposite of what they want you to do. But please listen to someone who understands where you're coming from. I really do. It's a good way to find new authors. Ebooks and anthologies are a great way to find new authors, to kind of try them out. And if you like them, go for it. Go crazy on the physical books. But it's sometimes hard to justify the cost when it's a new author, or when it's something you're kind of, I don't know about. And ebooks go on sale for 99 cents all the time. You can get them through certain websites online for really cheap. It's a good way to sort of find new things. And it's cost effective. I'm a big fan of doing it that way. If you look, I also want to talk about audiobooks. Audiobooks are a thing now, and I have to tell you, so my husband has ADD, and he has told me, he's never been much of a reader, and he has told me that audiobooks are much easier for him to follow than sitting down with a book. He will straight up fall asleep reading a book. He could be in the most uncomfortable position ever and he will fall asleep. So audiobooks are a really good they're a really good option for you if it's something that, if you're going through stuff really fast. The only problem with audiobooks is, especially with the smaller presses, with the more indie publishers, they don't have the capabilities to get audiobooks done necessarily. Like, I don't have any audiobooks of any of my works. I'm going to try to fix that, but there's not a whole lot available to us to get that done. But like the bigger books, popular series, not only do they come available in audiobook, they spend the money to get a really great narrator for the story for you. And I have to tell you, it makes all the difference in the world. So for my podcast, A Case for Classics, I do listen to a lot of audiobooks of classical works, and a lot of these works have already gone into the public domain. So a resource that I use is a resource called LibriVox. And you can listen to them on YouTube, actually. And it's volunteers who will read the book to you through audio form. And the problem with that is it is free, and I'm very thankful for it, and I'm not going to stop using this. But they're not necessarily great narrators. They're literally just reading and not reading, if you know what I mean. However, I have also found sometimes authors will read their books to you, and they're fantastic. I did Toni Morrison's book, Beloved, and she read the book, and it was fantastic. I usually listen to those when I'm like doing housework, and I had to sit down a few times to just to listen to her reading. It's not my favorite way of getting the information. I would rather sit and read the book, but I've only got so much time, and especially when the podcast is, up and running. We're on a hiatus right now, but when we're up and running, it takes a lot of time just to do a single episode. I mean, especially if I haven't yet read the book myself, it takes a very long time for each episode. And audiobooks, it's easy access, and they're also fairly affordable. I know Audible, whether or not you're game with fucking around with Amazon or not, Audible, my husband has really enjoyed it. Very affordable. But I'm going to talk about another resource for audiobooks. I just talked about LibriVox, and I'll make sure to list this stuff in the description box. There's going to be a lot of stuff in the description box, so beware, but please check it out. So the other thing I want to talk about, especially when we're talking about cost, is libraries. Now, in a perfect world, everybody has a library card and utilizes it. It is not a perfect world, and I know a lot of people maybe don't understand how important the public library is, or maybe don't really know all that it offers. So when I was growing up, I grew up in a small town, but I grew up in a rural part of this small town, and there was no easy access to the public library. We took a school field trip there when I was in maybe first or second grade, and I got a library card and I checked out a book, and it was like magical to me. But because of where I lived and because of vehicle availability, it was not someplace that I could go to a lot, and I ended up with this really way overdue book that, my mom didn't want to drive all the way into town to go trade it in for another book. It was something that I wasn't able to utilize. However, because my home life wasn't super great, I spent most of my summers with my grandma. And my grandma, who was an avid reader, had a library card, and because I was spending so much time with her, decided I should have a library card too. She lived in another town, and so her library was different, but I had a library card with her. And I loved going to the library with my grandma. I loved just going and sitting in the stacks. I would sit on the footstools and browse the books. I would open them up and, skim them a little bit. Because unlike in a bookstore, in a library, you can really just slow down, take your time, putter around, and just be with the books. Also, the library had, I can't remember if it was upstairs or downstairs, it's been a very long time, but the local public museum was housed in the same building. And if you had a library card, you could get in for free. Now, this was a very small town in West Virginia, and it was mostly about Civil War stuff. And if you had at all a fear of dolls or mannequins, this history museum would scare the shit out of you. But it was a resource, all of the mannequins had plaques, and you could go, you actually learned something. It was a little cheap and hokey because, of course, funds were limited. But it was information. They had, Civil War uniforms there, blue uniforms, because West Virginia was a part of the Union. It was neat. So where I live now, I live in Eastern Pennsylvania. The town that I live in is a struggling town. This is not a wealthy town. And of course, if we're having trouble filling in our potholes, of course, the public library is not getting a lot of resources. Having said that, my public library is still fucking awesome. It is a resource that I haven't been able to use because of the pandemic so much. They've been closed a lot because they don't have a lot of resources to, mitigate the circumstances of the pandemic. So they've been closed a lot. I don't know if they're open right now. I should look into that. I don't think I'm personally comfortable with going just yet, but I miss it. I very much miss it. My public library being not a well-funded library. Like, if you live in a town where your public library is well-funded, oh my God, the resources you can have. So my library, keep in mind, not well-funded, passes to the local museum for free. You can get yourself in for free. Now, there are only so many. So you go to the library and you ask for passes, and sometimes they'll put you on a waiting list, and then they'll call you when they come in, and you can go for free. Our local museum is actually really neat. They get things, the traveling shows, the dinosaur bones will come through. We had the King Tut exhibit for a little bit, very little bit, but it's nice to go. It's a really neat thing to take my kids to. It's nice to go for me. I like to go. The CD and DVD rentals. You can do game rentals. You can do gaming at this library. They have, if you're wanting to learn a new language, say, I used Duolingo for a while, but I used the free version. I know that there's a paid version that's a little better. I plateaued on the free version, and then they just started throwing words at me like I was supposed to know what they were. I wasn't getting much out of the app. At my library, they have those professional language learning things like Rosetta Stone. With a library card, that's free. My library offers classes, book clubs. They have a crafting circle. If you're a crafter, you join the crafting circle. They'll teach you how to do all kinds of stuff. Now, something that I love about my library is you can rent. There are certain books that if you were to go to a bookstore, Amazon, these books are really expensive, like biographies, big, meaty biographies on famous people. If you were to buy them, these would be $35 to maybe even $50 books just for the one book. Also with cookbooks, holy shit, cookbooks are expensive. Now, if you think about how many people have to go into a cookbook, the team of people that has to put it together with the photography and all of that, with the testing the recipes, making sure they're okay. There's a lot that goes into a cookbook, but it also makes cookbooks really expensive. You can check out cookbooks from your local library. You can also check out ebooks from your local library. You can check out audiobooks from your local library. My little piddly ass local library has a website and an app for my phone where I can check out ebooks, I can check out audiobooks. Now, maybe their selection isn't super great. So, if you're a listener to a Case for Classics, it would be great if I could talk you guys. If you listen to my podcast, and again, if you don't, it's totally fine, I promise. I'm just bringing it up because I talk about it a lot on the podcast. It's an app for your phone called Libby, Libby, and it's for anybody. If you have a library card, you sign up for this app and you put in your library card information and you have access to even more titles, ebooks and audiobooks specifically. And I use this app like crazy for research with the podcast mostly, but I mean, this is all free to you. These things, because you're a taxpayer, they belong to you. They are free to you. All you have to do is utilize it. Get a library card. And I know there are certain libraries, like, you know those character cake pans from like Wilton? If you want to make your kid, your niece, your friend who has a funny sense of humor, like if you want to make them a Pikachu cake, there's some libraries who have these cake pans. You can check them out. There are people who hold like Dungeons and Dragons games at libraries. Libraries have free Wi-Fi to card holders. They have desk space. You can utilize printing services with them, usually for a small fee, but it is a small fee. You can, people who go to Starbucks to do their writing to work. First of all, I don't know why I would end up people watching. I wouldn't get anything done. But go to your library. Your library is also an important source for local history. Even my local library, it has a local history room. And because of where I am, there's a lot of really important local history that's extremely interesting. You have to sign in because a lot of these resources are older. Oh, sorry, stuff's popping up for me. Microfiche, old newspaper clippings, that stuff is all there. If you need to look up local history, if you need sort of resources or touchstones of certain eras in time, your library is for it. Now, it's important for a writer because of the resources. You can't just do this with just an internet access. You need other things, especially when it comes to local resources. But as a reader, as a citizen of your area, this is something you need to utilize. And the more cards that they have, the more patrons that they have, the more people that they have in there, it's important for their numbers. So it's important that you do that. You can also go in and request copies of certain books. If you love a certain smaller press author, I think that is sometimes limited for how much they can do with the small presses, but they're accommodating because that's your library. You pay the taxes, that's your library. Get the card and utilize it. So again, I'm not here for saying buy less books, spend less money on books. You know your limits. You know what's good for you. Spend all the money you want. Have as many loaded down bookshelves as you need to make you feel happy, because I get it. I'm never going to be a person who says don't do that, because nobody's going to tell me that. But there are other ways to kind of supplement that addiction, especially when times are tight, and especially if there are just some things that you can't get at a convention, especially with things like biographies and cookbooks. Those things are very expensive, but they're also really good to have around. You can check them out for free and get to know your librarians, talk to them. It's a good thing. So what I'm going to have in the description box down below, first of all, I'm going to give you the Twitter handles of some really cool librarian accounts. Just a forewarning, in case this is something you're sensitive to, I absolutely am not. This is why I love librarians. The majority of them are activists. These are people who work within the community, all aspects of the community, and therefore they have a certain point of view that makes them want to be activists, which I think says something. So I've got a list just a few, just a few librarians to check out online because they're really fucking cool people. I'm also going to try to link the video that I did on secondhand bookstores and just some other cool shit. I'll talk about the Libby app, and I hope that the world is treating you well. And if it isn't, get a library card. Go to the library. Go chill out among the peace of the stacks. Because there are some of us who that is therapy. And if it is, it's there for you. It belongs to you. You pay for it. Go get the card. Really. Go get the card. So that'll be it for me. I was going to do, I forgot a lot of weird monsters for the previous videos, and I was like, oh god, I could do a part 3. But here's the thing, if I go down that hole, I'm going to remember werewolves that I forgot. I'm going to remember vampires that I forgot, because your girl's scattered, okay? But we're going to move on. And I actually think it's time we start talking about haunted houses. One of my favorite things in the whole wide world. We're going to talk haunted houses next week. We will, of course, start with movies, but when we get to books, oh, baby, I got some stuff for you. So that'll be it for me. Again, I hope everything's okay. I hope, despite the world, that you are able to maintain a sane bubble. And, if not, you can reach out to me. My Instagram and Twitter accounts are always in the description box below. Feel free to friend me or follow me. And feel free to reach out if you need to talk, because I'm happy to talk to you. I'm happy to be a source of comfort or ranty, not comfort, but friend. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. And if you enjoy these videos, feel free to talk about them. Feel free to be like, hey, this really weird lady is doing these videos on YouTube about books and movies and shit like that. I'm sure you will be better worded than myself, but feel free to put the word out. That would be very nice. And if not, I still appreciate you. So I'm going to end this very long goodbye. I've just turned into my mother. I'm going to go, and then you spend the next 15 minutes talking about the weather. But I will see you next week with haunted houses, and let's see if the remote's going to do me dirty today. Bye.